Hey everybody, it's JJ here, and we're back again with another ASUS PC Day Hard live stream. If you joined us a little bit earlier in the day, we of course jumped into being able to talk about, of course, one of the latest additions to the AM5 lineup, and that was going to be with, of course, the new ROG STRIX X670E gaming motherboard. And today we're going to be following suit to be able to go ahead and complete out the overall trifecta with the TUF gaming X670 PLUS motherboard. And so this is going to help to kind of solidify what I refer to sometimes as our gaming trifecta, which is going to be our good, better, best series of motherboards, where we've got the TUF gaming series, which is going to be a fantastic choice for those that are looking to build a system that's stable, reliable, has a great set of features and functions, but doesn't necessarily bring in a lot of the more specialized niche features that we might offer on ROG STRIX or ROG CROSSHAIR series of motherboards. So we're going to be definitely diving into this board, giving you the full flyover in terms of the aesthetics, the core features, functions, and specifications. We'll also do a little bit of comparison to how it stacks up against the Strix and even how it compares to the Crosshair, if you're wondering about kind of how the boards sit in relation to each other. But as always, we recommend that if you're interested in, of course, getting all the information, make sure to go ahead and check out the ASUS PC DIY group, which is linked in the description. And also make sure to keep in tune for our full launch live stream, where you can go into all the specifics regarding everything from specialized aspects like PCIe lane mapping, overclocking expectations, full UEFI tour demos, and the full comprehensive breakdown of all our features and functions, where we haven't necessarily detailed all of those elements, even for some of the ROG boards where we have had a first look preview stream offered on them. So let's go ahead and jump into the chat here. Let's see who we have joining us. Hey, Michael, always happy to have you here on the stream. Thanks so much. Appreciate you joining us here on the stream. Let's see who else we have joining us here. Let me go ahead and just remove that audio there. Just go ahead and clean that up, make it a little bit softer for you guys. Hey, Pidgey PCs, happy to have you here on the stream. Thanks so much. Derek, yes, it has been a definitely busy day for me. I've been running back and forth doing these guys, as well as getting prepped to be able to put more information regarding some of our amazing announcements that we've had at Gamescom, including new micro ATX motherboards, mini ITX motherboards, a brand new Ryu 3 cooler, new ROG Aimpoint gaming mice, a brand new ROG mesh networking product, as well as a few other items too. So we've definitely got a lot packed in to be able to talk about over the next few days. So let's see who else we have. We have Ed Martin joining us here. Fantastic to have you here. And we've got Gamer X Esports. Hey, happy to have you. I think it's the first time I've seen somebody like that jumping us into the build. So thanks so much for joining us here. So let's get ready to go ahead and just jump straight into it. I don't want to go ahead and take any longer than I need to. So let's go ahead and just take a look at the board. You guys already, of course, saw it there in the prior little kind of intro animation. And so let's go ahead and bring this one up. So give me 1 second here. All right, so here it is. It's a really great looking board. I really love the overall design aesthetic. You can really see that it has a unique updated design language, which of course is going to be very different than the prior X570 series motherboard, where here and now this is updated with the new iconography and the design language for our current TUF gaming branding. This is actually based in a vector design language. Some cool things that you may or may not know. This actual pattern right here is derived actually from the headquarters building in Taiwan, where there's actually some symmetry in terms of kind of the layout that we went ahead and kind of put in there as a little bit of a design Easter egg. So if you're kind of wondering sometimes where you might see some of the design inspiration, we pull from a lot of different sources. And so here, this one's actually kind of cool because it gets back to the actual source of where the boards are being designed and of course produced. So very, very cool in terms of that overall accent piece. And then of course you can see some cool little coordinates that would track you back to that information if you were wondering about that. So in addition to that, you'll see that we're kind of maintaining the overall design trend here to really maintain a monochromatic color scheme. So there's no fixed colors to contend or compete with your build. There's no fixed RGB lighting zones as well. So for those of you that kind of prefer team no RGB, this is going to be a great choice for you. There is a very small amount of accent RGB right here down in the right-hand corner, but of course you can go into the Armory Crate software and disable that. So if you just want to run the board in kind of pure dark mode, then you are good to go. At the same time, if you're somebody that does like to elevate your build through RGB lighting, you want to take advantage of those new TUF Gaming ARGB 120mm fans, then this board has been upgraded. The original TUF Gaming X570 PLUS board only had one ARGB header. So of course, now here we've kind of upgraded it to our modern specifications. So you've got 3 ARGB headers plus a legacy 4-pin header that's present on the board. And of course, like I said, you've got that really nice, clean, monochromatic stylized ID, which I think looks really great. Let's see. So PGPCs is throwing us a little commentaries. Love to see dual 8-pin EPS at the top as well. Yeah. So one of the great things we're going to talk about is definitely this board. While it's going to be the entry to our gaming line, it's going to offer a very performant oriented design, from the overall power topology to the actual power delivery design, and also our ProCool power connections, which are thicker pins to be able to support a higher level of wattage, are all going to work together to be able to give you a great overclocking experience, so that you can run with definite confidence, so you don't have to worry about that. So even if you aren't necessarily going to make the investment into going to an ROG Strix or to an ROG Crosshair board, you don't definitely need to worry about that. HO Computers is giving us that the bottom right TUF RGB panel is cool. Yeah, it's kind of been a hallmark now. We've had it for a couple of generations. It's just a nice kind of little subtle way to be able to add a little bit of edge lighting to the board, and I think it looks cool. You see right here, so he says, ooh, I like that. I've always been a fan of the TUF series. I tend to lean on it. Did my build today with the Z690, and it's nice to see the aesthetic for the new TUF boards. Always makes a modder happy. Yeah, I would definitely agree. And Derek, always love seeing your work. One of my favorite modders, really bring a creative perspective to your builds. And I think this is going to be a great piece for first-time builders, for people that have been building for 10 years, to modders. It's got a really cool just overall design aesthetic. So let's go ahead and get ready to jump a little bit closer in. We'll take a look at some of the key specifications in terms of not only the, of course, the VRM, the audio design, the USB connectivity, the PCI layout. We'll also go ahead and cover, and then also, of course, make sure to jump into your guys' questions. So let's go ahead and bring up maybe just a couple of other images that we can cycle through just to give a little bit of reference, and then we'll do a little bit of a dive to kind of take a little bit of a tour visually on the board. So let me go ahead and just load up some other images here. All right, so here we can see we've got the board, and one of the first things, again, you're going to see is that really clean kind of monochromatic color scheme. The vector design language is really kind of present throughout the entirety of the board, where you can see right there on the integrated IO shield. And that's one of the first things I do want to go ahead and touch on, is that you may realize that the IO shield itself, along with the VRM heatsink, is actually one fully integrated piece. So one nice upgrade here is that compared to the prior generation Plus, this does fully integrate the IO shield. So that is again going to give you superior ESD and EMI performance. So that's going to be an improvement. But also in terms of the overall thermal dissipation performance, this is a massive VRM heatsink. So you have a very large VRM heatsink that makes full dual contact. What I mean by dual contact is it means it makes contact with not only the inductors, but it also makes contact with the power stages that are present on the motherboard. And then you can see right here, you have this really large VRM heatsink, which extends not only from this portion of the board, but actually goes into the actual IO shroud itself. So you have that full, large, 2-stage massive VRM aluminum heatsink. And you can really feel confident in the overall thermal stability, the thermal efficiency of this board. It's not going to be a question whether you're going to run stock or overclock. You are going to be good to go. In addition to that, of course, as we take a little bit more of that visual tour throughout the board, you can see, of course, you've got DDR5. All of the X670E boards are DDR5 in terms of their specification. You got those EPS power connectors, right? You got the 24-pin motherboard power connector. You got your fan headers right there. As I noted, for the ARGB headers, there's four headers in total, 3 of which are ARGB and 1 is legacy. You then, of course, have your USB 3 Gen 2 internal USB-C header, and then you, of course, have your legacy USB 3 header right there. Some additional fan headers right there, and then the SATA has been split up into 2 configurations with 2 sets of SATA, 2 SATA ports right here, and then another 2 SATA ports there. So 2 sets of 2 SATA ports. So that gives you a total of 4 ports that are present on the board. Of course, more fan headers down there. 3 USB 2 headers, which is nice. So if you want the flexibility of adding in, a TUF Gaming AIO cooler, maybe a USB add-in controller, different types of devices that require those USB ports, it's nice. We actually worked specifically with our team to make sure that we had a high number of internal USB 2 headers, because we know that many kind of specialized accessories or controllers do utilize these. So you have that. Then, of course, you have the full TUF Gaming isolated audio design. And we're going to be touching on this a little bit more. I'm just kind of doing a little bit of a general flyover. And then in terms of the PCIe layout for M.2 based SSDs, this board is spec'd quite well. The original only had 2 M.2 based SSDs that were supported. And here you're going to actually be able to support 4. And I'm really proud of the fact, compared to some of the other manufacturers, which have already made some announcements, we're maintaining PCI Gen 5 support for both M.2 SSD and for PCI based graphics. So you have PCI Gen 5 support for your graphics, and you also have PCI Gen 5 M.2 based SSD support. In addition to that, the board will also support 2 PCI Gen 4 NVMe based SSDs, and then 1 single PCI Gen 3 M.2 based, PCI Gen 3 NVMe M.2 based SSD. So a lot of flexibility, still 4 drives. That's fantastic to be able to have that level of storage, and of course still be able to have the fastest level of performance with PCI Gen 5 for those next generation drives that are coming to the market. So let's go ahead and just get some other shots here in play. You can see it looks really good. I just love the overall design aesthetic on this board. And of course, it's got all that updated iconography that's present on there. Okay, so let's get ready to, I guess, first talk maybe about the connectivity, or what do you think, the power delivery? I think we can kind of go either which way, but let me first go ahead and just see which questions we have in there before we get ready to jump into the key specifications. So give me 1 second right here to just open this up. Get ready to dive into this in a moment. Okay, and we will also pop in and double check and see what kind of questions we might have from those of you on just some of the general points we've noted. And again, if you guys have any other questions general to some of the other boards that we've gone ahead and made an announcement to, feel free to go ahead and ask, and I'll do my best to go ahead and dive into those when I can. And keep in mind, I will have a little bit later a comparison between the TUF Gaming, the ROG STRIX, and the Hero, just so you have a little bit of sense of kind of what we're doing from kind of the design perspective, the feature set, and the functionality. Okay, so all right, so let me bring this up and let's see what questions we might have that's come up right here. All right, HO Computer says, I highly doubt he will drop any prices today. That's correct. So if anybody's asking about any pricing, I don't have any MSRP pricing that I can provide for you today. So nothing in that regard. The best that I can tell you in that regard, of course, is from a pricing perspective, the TUF Gaming series is always going to be the entry to our gaming line, and that will offer the lowest price point in relation to kind of our gaming product line. So we have our TUF Gaming, we then have our ROG STRIX, and then we have our ROG CROSSHAIR. So TUF Gaming will take up at the lowest price point. Then you would have ROG STRIX, and then of course you would have the ROG CROSSHAIR series. See, we have a question, is the Prime and the TUF the same layout? Right. No, technically, actually, there are some differences. So the actual TUF Gaming team is different from the actual Prime series team in terms of the development. And I can actually show the Prime board a little bit later, and you can see that some of the layout is actually a little bit different in terms of the configuration. So they are not exactly the same. And of course, aesthetically, the Prime is quite different because it's a white themed motherboard as opposed to the TUF Gaming, which is, of course, monochromatic in terms of the color scheme. All right. How much leaning towards hope will have gone into making sure the AM5s don't repeat? Let me see. Is this the Ryzen cooler, the new one? Yeah, so this one right here is the Ryzen 2. We will also have the upcoming Ryu 3, which will be a new, actually, circular pump head, which actually supports our new animate display technology, will actually be available. And if you are wondering, all of our current coolers, so the TUF Gaming LC, the Strix LC, the Ryzen 2 are all supporting AM5, so there's no issues in terms of interoperability to support these next generation based motherboards. All right. Go ahead and keep dropping in your questions there. I want to go ahead and keep moving this along, and let's start talking about some of the actual kind of specifics here on the board side, right? So let's go ahead and take a look a little bit about the VRM and the overall kind of power topology, right? So as we take a look here at the board, you can see that we have a quite nice, of course, like I said, 2-stage VRM heatsink design. And in terms of the overall power delivery, this is a 14+2 teamed power stage configuration. And what we mean by teamed power stage is that this is different than using, let's say, phase doublers. It means actually we've designed the power stages to work in concert together. And this is specifically due because when you have a high number of cores, you also have a lot of dynamic boosting in terms of frequency. You have something that's called transient response. And what we did is when we've measured the overall responsiveness of the VRM assembly working under a team configuration specifically for transient response, we really find that it provides a very high level of performance, and it really complements this type of modern CPU-based architecture. So as you've increased the number of cores, you're increasing the boosting capabilities of the CPU. This type of team power architecture works really well, and it's been validated. Now, we've now used this for multiple generations, and I think those in the community have really seen that we've been at the forefront of really offering the top level of performance when it comes to our power delivery designs. If we take a look at something like, AMD on AM4, we were the #1 validated motherboard on HWBot for X370, X470, and X570, right? And I think that really speaks to the overall experience that users have had with our boards from an overclocking perspective. And the TUF gaming boards, especially the Plus and the Pro models from X570, really were a community favorite. Tons of users getting a great experience out of them, whether they were stock or overclocked. And again, here you can feel really confident with this 14+2 70 amp base power stages are going to be on the board. One of the other differences is that this board will feature a slightly different PCB layer count than we're going to have with the ROG series. ROG series will feature very premium 8-layer, and then on the ROG Crosshair series, they will have an 8-layer low loss PCB. This, you have a 6-layer base PCB, but that still complements also, of course, a copper-based layer 2 to be able to improve thermal dissipation performance, especially when you're really heavily saturating the CPU and hammering it. It's going to be able to ensure that you have a stable and reliable operation, good thermal dissipation performance. Now, moving from that, if we take a look here at the connectivity, this is still quite nice in terms of the connectivity. Of course, the Strix board that we talked about previously had 13 ports, and the ROG Crosshair boards had 12 ports. And so here we have 2, 4, 6, and then 4 down here. So that means a total of 10. So that's 10 ports, but I really like to point out the fact that's a lot of ports for one. In our recent polling, we found that actually the majority of users, even on the high end, don't use more than 8 ports. So this still gives you 2 ports as a buffer. And I would also like to note, there's no old USB 2 ports here, right? These are all high-speed based ports. So you get 10 gigabits and even 20 gigabits based connectivity available to you. Now, that's where you'll notice a little bit of an upgrade. If you look at, let's say, the Strix will give you 3 Type-C ports, and then the Crosshair series will give you actually even more. It'll give you 4 USB ports, USB-C, and it will also give you 40 gigabits. So the Crosshair has 40 gigabits, 20 gigabits, and 10 gigabits, while the TUF Gaming will give you 20 gigabits and, 10 gigabits. You're also, of course, going to have integrated HDMI and display ports. So if you want to be able to take advantage of the integrated RDNA graphics, which is on the new Ryzen 7000 series processors, you're good to go. But of course, the motherboard is going to have that PCI Gen 5 slot on there. So of course, that's fully backwards compatible with PCI Gen 4, which is what the majority of users are going to be utilizing if they drop in a graphics card. In addition to that, you're also going to, of course, have Wi-Fi 6E with the latest generation Bluetooth 5. And then you're also going to have, of course, 2.5 gigabit LAN that's going to be present on there, multi-channel line level out audio. And of course, that will be part of the TUF Gaming isolated audio design. And we'll talk about that in a little bit there. So moving over here in terms of M.2 based expansion, it's quite robust in terms of what we would have there. So you're going to have still four M.2 slots that are going to be on the motherboard. That's twice the amount that was on the prior X570 generation, with 1 PCI Gen 5, 2 PCI Gen 4, and then 1 PCI Gen 3. So that's tons of flexibility. And the reality is, even if it was still only Gen 3, from a gaming, desktop productivity perspective, general use, that's more than enough bandwidth to be able to ensure an amazing experience. But of course, having that flexibility to move into PCI Gen 4 or PCI Gen 5 is fantastic. It really giving you kind of all the latest specifications of what X670E is allowing for, and being able to give you a path to upgrade over time as you want to be able to adopt newer and newer specifications. So I already noted, of course, on the AGB headers on board, where you have 3 ARGB headers and then 1 legacy ARGB header. So that's 3-pin and 4-pin are both present on here. And we'll talk about the audio here in a little bit. I do want to make, of course, note that this is very complementary to, of course, both AIO-based cooling configurations or custom water cooled configurations, as you have an AIO pump header, and you also have a water pump header. So if you want to be able to connect, of course, a pump reservoir to the board, you can go that route, Or if you're using something like an TUF Gaming, LC cooler, then you can go ahead and connect that to the fan headers and to the AIO pump header. All right, let me go ahead and just see. I've gone through a lot of information right there. So let me just see if we have any quick questions. HO Computer says, I agree with Gwen. It's pretty loaded and great aesthetics too. Yeah, I think, really here, there's very minimal kind of compromise. When we take a look at side by side, I'll start to show you some of the key differences. But an example of a difference would be, the Crosshair series will have an ESS Saber DAC. It will have 40 gigabit space connectivity. It'll have 60-watt USB-C charging. Those are all fantastic features. But for many users, they're not necessarily critical, right, at really defining a stable and reliable system, and they don't affect performance, of course, from the CPU or the DRAM or the SSD-based aspects, right? The 40 gigabits, of course, affects performance if you have a 40 gigabit enabled solution, but most users don't, right? So those are just going to be some of the differences. But overall, I think for the balance, it's a really great board in terms of its overall features and functions. Let's see. Also, are you ever going to implement audio that lets you utilize onboard DACs, USB-C headsets? So that's not really. It's kind of theoretically possible in terms if you want a matrix kind of digital audio to be matrix through. But right now, we're finally starting to just see that USB-C based headsets are starting to almost get to about 50% of the share of the market, where still the majority of users are using analog based focus. So our focus is still optimizing the audio design to be analog based. In most situations, when you go to a USB based headset, so take for instance, like here, ROG Delta, it has a quad ESS Saber DAC and amp built into it, and it's tuned specifically to the drivers and to the design of this headset. So it wouldn't really necessarily make sense to then try to have it be processed through another DAC. Although theoretically, if the DAC was right, you could say that it has maybe better sampling or some other characteristics, right? But from our perspective, our goal is to try to maximize the analog output connection, right, for either the line level out or for the front headphone audio out, right? And that's where we're maintaining our focus. We do, though, ensure that the software suite that we have can complement both in analog and digital based setups. So that means that, take for instance, like our AI noise canceling, it doesn't care whether you use an analog headset or a digital headset, it'll work, right? The multi-parameter EQ that we have available to you, it can work, both digitally and it can also work analog, right? So there's still flexibility to benefit, but it's definitely true that the isolated audio design benefits users most that have an analog based headset. Okay. Somebody's asking about no optical audio. That is correct. There's no optical audio on this board. If you want optical audio, you would have to step up to the ROG STRIX board. Okay. Edmard's asking, will the SQ7 come about at the same time as this board? The SQ7, for those you might not be aware, is our first M.2 NVMe based SSD. It'll be under our ROG line. And right now, we don't have 100% confirmation on its timeline for a release, but I would project that we may be looking about an early Q4 release. All right. You're going to show the difference between the boards? Yes. I will go ahead and talk a little bit about the actual differences in the boards there in a moment. Will there be an Evangelion edition? No, there will not be an Evangelion-based edition. Brandon Peter saying, will the TUF Gaming aesthetic be used in the new Intel? So I can't talk about anything that's under NDA or under embargo, but all I can tell you is if you take a look at our current Z690 TUF Gaming, they already use this design ID language. All of our TUF Gaming products should be using this ID design language, which is now the new design ID language, which differs from the older one, which had the wing, the shield, or essentially what was originally designed for our TUF series, not the TUF Gaming series. So anything moving forward that is going to be TUF Gaming would be utilizing this type of what we call vector design language for TUF Gaming. Okay. Kindar asks, do any of these boards have USB 4 support? Not this board specifically, but the ROG Crosshair series does have USB 4 support. So that board will feature 40 gigabits, 20 gigabits, and 10 gigabits based connectivity. Okay. Let me see. Is the TUF worth over generic Asus AM5? So I'm assuming you would mean maybe say comparing that to something like our Prime series, right? So our Prime series is kind of like our stalwart series. This technically the Prime kind of a Pro model would be positioned slightly above the TUF Gaming base SKU, but the Dash P would be kind of comparable to this model. And in that respect, there would be fairly similar level of kind of features and functions, but the TUF Gaming board might have a little bit higher end, let's say like audio design, maybe a little bit of higher end power delivery. So there are going to be some kind of advantages to this board compared to something like the Dash P, but the Dash P is still a really good board. It's a little bit of a sleeper for some people that aren't aware about it. I like to say that if you're really looking for that ultra high value proposition, it's not a bad choice to look at. It seems a lot of the questions are centering around kind of comparing some of the boards. So let me go ahead and bring those up before I get into some of the other elements here. But I do quickly want to go back and touch on the ProCool power connection and the way that the actual power topology is laid out on the motherboard. So if we go ahead and bring up this slide, I think this helps to kind of bring us a little bit of context. And so if we talk about the actual ProCool power connectors on the motherboard, these are thicker pins, and the thicker pins help to provide essentially a higher level of current. And we can see right here that the theoretical markers, when you don't essentially have the ProCool power connection, allows you to have one level of wattage, but once it's implemented, it allows you to have a higher level of wattage. It also provides a benefit of better thermal efficiency, which means the actual pins in the inside literally they don't produce as much heat. And so this can actually be important because sometimes with certain cables, certain connections, you can actually really warm up that internal contact, and that header can actually be quite hot. So in terms of just helping to ensure the overall best performance, the best thermal efficiency, that's the reason why we have these ProCool power connectors. It's actually something we originally designed for our workstation series of motherboards, which workstations and servers, of course, have much, much higher sustained CPU loads, right? In some situations, they could be running extended high CPU loads for hours upon hours upon hours throughout the day, where under gaming workloads and general desktop usage, your CPU utilization is quite a bit kind of more bouncy. It kind of goes up and down. It's not really heavily loading the CPU, but we found being able to bring over this design just helps to, like I said, improve the overall experience, allow it to be more performant, allows it to be more durable. And when that's complemented, like I said, with the 14+2 70 amp power stage design, really helps to be able to give us a great base for being able to have a great experience when it comes to, like I said, overclocking, or if you just want to be able to go ahead and enable something like PBO and be able to get a great experience, you're good to go. So let's go ahead and bring up the 3 images of the board right here, and we'll keep moving things along here. So give me 1 second to just bring up the TUF Gaming board. I'll bring up the Strix board, and then I'll also bring up the Crosshair, okay? So let's bring up the TUF Gaming board. We'll bring up the Dash E, and we'll also bring up the Hero. And that kind of almost gives us like this good, better, best kind of design, right? And I'm going to bring up the Hero with actually no RGB, just because I love the way that part of that way that board looks. So I want to kind of just bring it up that way. So okay, there we go. 1, 2, 3. Okay, perfect. All right. So here you go. So this is actually all 3 boards kind of side by side. Let me go ahead and just zoom in here just a little bit, just so you guys can see them a little bit closer. So here you can see this is pretty much the good, better, best kind of trifecta. Hey, Patrick, this is actually live here. I've been answering questions. So if you have one, feel free to go ahead and drop it in, but I'll do my best when I can try to get to your question. Yes, I'm trying to monitor what we have there in the chat at the same time while going over these details. So as you can see right here, this is the TUF Gaming board. This is the ROG Strix board, and this is the Crosshair motherboard. So you can see all of them have a really clean, great looking design. They're all monochrome in terms of their overall color design. So there's nothing that's fixed or featured on the board that would kind of contend or compete. So if you literally were going for an all blackout build, all of them would be able to offer you a great blackout experience, right? I really love this though, kind of almost chrome aesthetic that we have on the Crosshair, where the polymer material that we have, when there's no RGB lighting, it really almost takes on this chrome kind of property to it. Keep in mind that for this board, you can go ahead and disable RGB lighting. So then you would just have the acrylic, which would look like a diffused kind of clear plastic with the actual acrylic etching that would be present there. And then on the TUF Gaming, you only have that RGB accent right there. So let's talk about some of the total differences here. So yes, total M.2 slots on the boards. They're all going to have a high number. So here we're going to have 4 M.2 base SSDs that are going to be supported, 1 PCI Gen 5, 2 PCI Gen 4, and 1 PCI Gen 3. On the Strix board, you're going to have 3 PCI Gen 5 and then 1 PCI Gen 4, right? So still 4, but you can realize that there's a difference there, right? And then, of course, with the Hero will actually support up to 5 M.2 based SSDs, including with the Hyper M.2 add-in card that gets installed on the motherboard. So it's very, very feature rich, right? So all of them really support tons of drives. It just comes down to how many like PCI Gen 5 drives do you want, which all of them support at least one, right? Another difference will be in the audio design. So here we're going to have the TUF gaming isolated audio design, which features the S1200 series audio codec, right? It still has audio grade capacitors and it has a DTS audio suite. But when we compare that to, let's say, the ROG Strix board will feature the ALC4080 audio codec, and it will also feature a Savitech amp. And so the amp will give you a little bit more punch, a little bit more dynamic range, a little bit more of kind of oomph when it comes to connecting your headphones. And then, of course, when you go into the Crosshair will go to the next level. It has the same ALC4080, but it also has the ESS Sabre DAC 9218, which is a brand new 32-bit quad DAC that we've gone ahead and implemented, which is even an upgrade to the prior Crosshair Hero, which also had an ESS Sabre DAC. And all the key specifications like THD, signal noise ratio, and all the metrics have all been pumped up to even be higher performing than they were in the prior generation. You're also going to have other subtler things. So like if we look in right here, of course, this board has the Q release technology. I really love the Q release feature, which is an easy way to be able to eject the graphics card. So you can see right here, the ROG Crosshair has it, the Strix has it, but the TUF Gaming does not have the eject feature on it, right? So that is just kind of something to be mindful of there. There's a difference. You also have, let's say, the water cooling zone headers for things like inlet and outlet and water flow monitoring built onto the Crosshair board, where that's not on either one of the Strix boards, right? You have, of course, more specialized OC headers and specialized functions that are going to be present on the Crosshair board that wouldn't be on either one of these boards, right? But in terms of base overclocking support that's enabled by the chipset and by the CPU, of course, that's going to be parity between all of these. Another difference will be the USB right here on the internal connector. That's your USB-C. So if we go ahead and go in tight right here, this right here, this connector is going to be standard, while this one will be a by 2 based connect. And so what that means is this can support 20 gigabits, right? And this will be 10 gigabits. So still very fast, but it'll be a little bit slower. You also have the benefit on this board that PCIe connector that you see right here supports 60-watt charging for the front USB-C, where there's no front 60-watt charging for the TUF gaming board, for instance, right? So that kind of just covers some of the points. The I/O, like I talked about, here 10 ports, here you've got 13 ports, and here you have 12 ports, but this board also has USB 4 with 40 gigabits. So let me go ahead and just see what questions might have come up in there, because we've got a lot that I know I've covered right there. So let me see, for what reason OLED screen on the motherboard, let me see. What was the reason for stopping the OLED screen on the motherboard like the Extreme in the forum? That we haven't stopped it. It's still there. So I guess I can show more pictures. So if actually I go over here, again, I was just trying to show the standard kind of lineup range that we have. But if we go back to the Extreme right here, right? So this is the Extreme. The Extreme has the full anime matrix, right? So if you want the flagship, if you want the end-all be-all, then the Extreme will have you covered. It has the full anime display matrix. It has the full OLED live dash stat display, so you can put, temperatures, clock speeds, flow monitoring. There's so many additional stat metrics that you can put here, right? So we still fully have that. That is present there on the Extreme, but that's never been on the Hero motherboard, take for instance. Okay, so again, here we're just focusing on these boards right here. Okay. Hey, JJ, wow, can't wait to see what these beauties look like. The Crosshair is so clean. Yeah, I agree. I would love to see what your guys' feedback. Let me go ahead and swap out the image for the Crosshair, and I'll show you what it now looks like with the RGB lighting, because here I do have the RGB lighting active, but you'll see that it looks quite different right there. Okay. Somebody's asking about ATX. So let me recap that. That's a good point. So this is ATX-based specification in terms of the actual form factor, ATX-based specification, and ATX-based specification. So all three of these are ATX. Only the Crosshair Extreme would be eATX, which means it's going to be a little bit larger in terms of the board size. Okay. Nothing here says, what about Armory Crate? Well, I can rest assured. I can tell you that we've worked really diligently from version 1 to all the way now. We're at version 5, and there's been significant milestone improvements to be able to add features, functionality, improve stability. And there's thousands upon thousands of users that are utilizing it right now and have a great experience. Some people get surprised. We have 20 million users plus right now that actually are utilizing Armory Crate across all of Armory Crate enabled devices. And a large percentage of that have now all updated to version 5. And version 5 doesn't just give you RGB lighting, it gives you system monitoring, it gives you access to fan controls, driver updates, scenario profiles to be able to change your fans and your lighting profiles, your audio presets from one application to another application just by that EXE coming out in the foreground. There are even going to be more exciting features and functions that we're integrating. You have things like SSD health monitoring built in. And I definitely feel confident. And another point that a lot of people don't even realize when it comes to something like Armory Crate is that we have actually done a lot of work compared to some other utilities on the market where we actually use what is called a UWP model. The UWP model has some significant advantages that when you actually look at the application actually supports what's called suspended mode. That means that if Armory Crate is present there, even if you have quote unquote services, which a lot of people like to have an opinion on, the reality is it doesn't utilize any CPU resources because it's a suspended application and only memory is actively loaded when the program is in the foreground. And even when that's the case, it's actually a minimal amount of memory. Discord, GeForce Experience, your web browser is going to use probably more memory than Armory Crate would. So we do feel very confident in the current state of the application, and we're committed to continue to make the experience even better. Okay. I like when let me see right here, total M.2, I already counted on that. So I think we got that. Okay. So I think probably covers most of those questions. Let me just see. Max RAM is asked by John. So the RAM is going to be, I can't get into specifics yet. That's technically, I believe, still an embargo, but we can go by basic aspects of what DDR5 already supports. So right now you can comfortably get, DDR5 even in 2 DIMM configurations with things like 64 gigabytes. But you can wait to see what the formal max specifications will be from AMD when the CPU announces in terms of the max density. But the reality is right now you can purchase DDR5 kit configurations that give you either 64 or even 128 gigabytes of memory. Okay. So Nevermint is asking, hi, will there be motherboards in more colors like white and silver or blue? I do actually, I can show you guys the Prime board. Let me go ahead and quickly swap out the image of the Crosshair Hero just to see, you guys can see the RGB lighting, and then I can show you the Prime board, which would be another board that we have within the lineup. Is there going to be a non-RGB version? So these are all non-RGB versions. When people ask that, it doesn't really make that much sense because you can always disable RGB off. Like for me, the Crosshair is maybe the perfect non-RGB motherboard, even though it has RGB, because right here, when it's off, it looks fantastic and it has a design that's been purposely designed for non-RGB, right? And here the Strix, while we're showing you with the RGB illuminated, again, you can turn it off and then it's no RGB. And the TUF doesn't have any RGB lighting zones except for this little zone right here, which again, you can turn off, okay? All right, so hopefully that answers your question right there. Let me just see right there. Multi-GPU, I can't talk about PCIe lane configuration support for multiple GPUs. You're going to have to make sure just keep tuned for the formal launch, and you'll be able to get into that, and you'll be good to go. Is there going to have a BIOS update for, I can't kind of give any coordination for that, but rest assured, we're going to commit to supporting our boards as they're available within the channel. So I think you've seen that we've had very strong UEFI support for both our Intel and AMD-based solutions, so I wouldn't be concerned with that, okay? Ashley is asking, the ROG Strix, the middle one looks like it only comes with 4 SATA ports versus the other 6 SATA. Is this the case? Yeah, so let's go ahead and count that for you, Ashley. So you can see right here, yes, the Crosshair actually has 6 SATA ports, okay? And then if we take a look right here at the Strix you can see has 4 SATA ports. And then you can see right here that the TUF Gaming has 4 SATA ports, 2 right here, and then 2 right here in this section right there. So again, this is going to be 4 on the TUF Gaming, and then here on the ROG Strix, you're going to have 2 right there, right? And then on the Crosshair, 2, 4, 6. Okay, so that is going to be your SATA port configuration. And keep in mind, you could always easily add more SATA by putting in an add-in card. But let me go ahead and bring up quickly the image for the Crosshair, and then I'm going to show the Prime because I know that we had some questions on people asking about the Prime. So we'll do that. So give me 1 second right here. I want to just drop this one in here. Okay. So I just want to show you guys the difference here. Now, here we have the Crosshair with RGB, and you can see just by adding that RGB, it looks quite a bit different, right? You know, just by adding that lighting zone in there. And this is the poly mode display, which with the poly mode display, that means that, of course, it has a 3-layered display. So you can actually go into the software and you can change to a different essentially kind of a design that's going to be present on that display. It's not just this ROG pattern. It actually has other displays that are present in there. So we have our poly mode display. This is the fixed acrylic display, which you can't change. You can change the lighting. And then the TUF Gaming has just that little accent. And of course, you can change the lighting pattern for that accent. So those are going to be essentially the RGB designs that are going to be present right there. Okay, in a moment here, I'll go ahead and I'll bring up the Prime board and we can take a look here at the Prime board. Maybe compare the Prime and even the ProArt, okay? I can show you guys the ProArt there, just a quick variance. Are you allowed to show any info on the Gene? Sure, I'll show the Gene. We actually showed the Gene in a little earlier stream today from the ROG STRIX board, right, that we showed off, but definitely I can go ahead and show that. Nope, no worries right there. What storage options we have and what about Gen 5? So again, to recap that, while I bring up then now the picture for the Prime and the ProArt, all the boards are going to have PCI Gen 5 for both graphics and for M.2 based SSDs. So again, to recap quickly here before I change out the picture of the boards to the ProArt into the Prime, for M.2 on the TUF, PCI Gen 5, 1, 2 PCI Gen 4, and then 1 PCI Gen 3. On the Strix, 4 M.2 again, 3 are PCI Gen 5 with 1 PCI Gen 4, and then on the Maximus, it's up to 5 5 M.2 based SSDs, and that would also include multiple, of course, PCI Gen 5 M.2 based SSDs. So tons of storage in that regard. Okay. All right, let me go ahead and bring up the image right here so you guys can check out the. I guess we can compare them, right? The Prime and the ProArt here to the TUF Gaming. And I'm going to finish also then just coming on some last points on the TUF Gaming board that I haven't touched on yet that I do want to go ahead and detail out in a moment, okay? So give me 1 second here to load up the images here. Okay, all right. And so let's go ahead and load this up here. We'll go put Prime in the middle, maybe. Let's put Prime on the end. Okay. All right. This image is, I have only an angled image, so it's going to look just a little bit different, guys. But let's go ahead and work with that. All right. So in case you're wondering kind of the different look right here, actually, hold on. I have an angled image of the TUF Gaming board, so at least it looks kind of somewhat consistent. TUF Gaming. Okay, here we go. All right, there we go. That should kind of look more or less somewhat consistent. All right. So here you go. Those are the 3 boards. They all look fantastic in my opinion. So here you have, of course, the Prime X670E Pro. This is the ProArt X670E Creator. And then here's the TUF Gaming X670E. So these are all X670E based motherboards, and they all look fantastic, but they all definitely have their own kind of distinctive design language, right? With the ProArt series, it's actually inspired by space exploration. So you have actually these kind of soft, rounded kind of design cues that are in there, some nice transparency. There's white and there's silver accents that are, of course, all complemented in with that beautiful, clean black PCB. This is a fantastic board for, again, professional creator, productivity users, gamers that just want maybe a white themed board. It's a fantastic choice. We then have our ProArt series, which really bring a clean, refined minimalism to the overall design aesthetic. It has these really nice slats and kind of refined design lines that are present throughout there. And then just that little bit of a premium aesthetic that I think is really nice with just the accent gold that's on there. It looks great. And then, of course, we have the vector design language, which is present on the TUF Gaming motherboards. So that gives you just some perspective that we've shown almost all the key series there, right? So we have our TUF Gaming series, our ROG Strix series, our Crosshair series, and then we have our ProArt series, and then we also have our Prime series. Okay. Mugman is saying, is ITX coming down the line? Yes, don't worry. We got you covered. The ROG Strix X670E-I gaming. So we do have a mini ITX-based motherboard. What kind of audio is on the board? So Valentine, we did talk about that. On this board, it is going to be, actually, I'll go into a dedicated slide on that just in a moment, but it is the S1200 audio codec. It has audio grade capacitors, and it still comes with the DTS audio suite, which offers a multi-band EQ. There's also some tailored presets for things like FPS games and things along those lines that you can go ahead and jump into. And then as you move into the next level on the ROG Strix, it comes with the ALC 4080 with audio grade capacitors, a more advanced audio suite with Sonic Studio 3 and a Sabi Tech amp, which allows for an increase in dynamic range, a little bit more oomph in terms of driving strength for higher impedance headphones. And then on the Crosshair series, they get the highest end audio with the ALC 4080, but they also have the ESS Saber 9218 DAC and amp built on board. Okay. Alexander says, how many SATA ports? So I thought I covered that, but on the TUF Gaming, it has 4 SATA ports on the board. Okay. Christopher's asking, are the ASUS coolers going to be compatible with AM5? Yes, all of our ASUS current coolers are going to be compatible with AM5. The Ryzen 2, though, I do believe will require a bracket, so you would have to contact us, but we will be working to essentially have a running transition where we'll include the bracket, of course, with newer production ones. Okay. Are you allowed to share any info on the Gene? Yes, I'll show you a little bit on the Gene, but we're going to have a dedicated stream on both the Gene and the ITX maybe tomorrow. So I'm not going to go fully into it, but I can show you at least the board, okay? Astros Guy's going, how many variants can we expect? I'm not going to jump into all of that. All I can tell you is please just make sure and keep it tuned to our formal AM5 launch. Our launch live stream, I will talk about everything that we will have available, okay? Can we have Armory Crate on Linux? No, sorry. Right now, we're not actively looking at implementing Armory Crate support for Linux. Okay. How is the VRM cooling on the left MOBO? So on this one, rest assured, no issues. It's a very large and robust heatsink right here, 2-stage heatsink. And I can tell you in prior, essentially testing, the Prime series is actually usually going to have even a little bit sometimes better thermal dissipation performance than even the TUF Gaming series. So again, here, this has a very high performant teamed power stage delivery design. Again, it's going to be a great choice, even if users want to be able to overclock. On none of these boards should you be concerned about the overall thermal efficiency or the dissipation performance of the VRM heatsink, okay? So we just right here see if there are any other questions that kind of came up right there. Any idea on these boards will be available for purchase? Bob Vila, I can't go into that, so just make sure to keep it tuned for, of course, forthcoming launch announcement, okay? Hey, Andy, happy to have you. Thanks so much, right? I don't know if it was asked already, but AM4 compatibility, no. So these are all native AM5. So AM5 is a new socket, right? It's LGA, it's DDR5 memory, and it's exclusively for Ryzen 7000 series CPUs. So if you're an AM4 user, that's end-of-life platform, right, on 500 series-based chipsets like B550, X570, right? Where does the Prime fit in the good, better kind of best board? That's actually a good question. So technically, if we talked about where TUF Gaming is good, and then ROG Strix is better, and then ROG Crosshair is the best, the Prime actually is generally positioned just a little bit above in terms of its overall kind of design and features points. For the Pro specifically, it's positioned usually lightly above the TUF Gaming board. So I would kind of almost consider it right in the middle between that kind of better, that kind of good and better perspective. So it's kind of similar, but it will be spec'd a little bit below the Strix board. So it's literally in between kind of TUF Gaming and ROG Strix, if that makes sense. Okay. All right. Just see right there. Okay, so let me go ahead and get into quickly here, just touching on some of the last elements that I want to note on here in terms of the audio design. And then I'm gonna, I think somebody had a question on the Gene. They wanted to see the Gene, right? So if you want to see the Gene, I will show you the Gene. Okay, so give me 1 second here and I will show you the Gene. But let me go ahead and see if I have it over here. What I wanted to touch on in terms of the audio design. Okay. I don't think actually I have that note that I would did want to touch on. So it's no worries right there. But again, as I noted right here, in terms of that specification, you are going to be good to go in terms of that S1200 series audio codec design. Now, one other thing I already believe I did touch on, which is going to be that these boards are going to be slightly different in terms of their PCB layer design compared to the ROG Strix series. Also, some people that have asked, hey, what about Thunderbolt support? These boards do have support for a Thunderbolt header, so they can support our Thunderbolt expansion card if you're interested in that. And somebody believe I might have asked also on the codec specifically on the TUF Gaming. On this model will be the Realtek S1220 A. So that's actually an improvement compared to the prior generation on some of the boards where it was the S1200. The S1220A is actually a little bit higher performing version than the S1200. So it is a little bit of an upgrade even compared to the prior generation. And also, another cool feature that I do kind of just want to touch on here is these boards still will offer the M.2 Q-latch design. So that will be the design where we have actually an integrated mechanism to easily go ahead and just latch in your M.2 SSD. You don't have to worry about placing this the standoff or the screw. You just remove the M.2 SSD heatsink, angle in the drive, and then just lock it into place. So that's a really nice feature and function that's present in there. The last item I want to touch on here before I bring up the Gene is also going to be a cool feature that I haven't talked about in the prior Steams, which will be our next generation AI cooling technology. So AI cooling actually is a really cool technology that we implemented to be able to essentially offer users a more kind of immediate way to be able to have a cooler and quieter experience, but without having to do anything pretty much in terms of fan calibration or profiling. For the new generation, essentially what will occur is once you engage AI cooling on a low level, the system will automatically essentially adapt to a stress test that gets run within a short period, and it will help to actually bring the fans in to what we call a low RPM or extreme quiet operating stage. So this actually helps to keep your system even quieter than it would normally default to, and allow you to have even lower power consumption, really quiet operation, but is also still aligned with the fan curve. So the moment if there was a heavier load, it would automatically engage. The great thing is normally to do this, you would have to normally run fan calibration and profiling. You then have to go into the fan controls. You'd have to enable extreme quiet mode and then maybe potentially set a lower curve. But the great thing is here was we have this built in, and all you pretty much have to do is just toggle the AI cooling technology on, and you're good to go. This also was a feature that was generally reserved for our higher end boards, but I'm really excited to be able to say that it'll be present even on a board like the TUF Gaming, which again is our entry into our gaming lineup. So I think that's a pretty awesome feature that we're introducing. So let me go ahead and show you guys here the Gene, and let's even show you guys the Dash I. So you guys can see the two small form factor boards if you're interested here. All right, give me 1 second right here. And there we go. All right, so let's make the micro ATX board not so tiny, so you guys don't think it's smaller than the mini ITX. Okay. All right. So here, if anybody was wondering about, again, I'm going to have a dedicated stream on these tomorrow. So if you want to find out more details on the Gene and on the ITX, as well as some other cool stuff, make sure to tune into our stream tomorrow and you'll find out about it. But here, at least you can check them out. We are now finally introducing small form factor product offerings for our AM5 that we can tell you about. So here we've got the Crosshair X670 Gene, and the really exciting thing is this is the first time that we've done Gene on the AMD lineup side of the fence. So this is a micro ATX board, very, very high performant base board. This is going to be featuring a very high performant VRM design, really built for kind of those tweakers, tuners, overclockers. As you can see, it's a 2 DIMM base board. It will have PCI Gen 5 for both the graphics and PCI Gen 5 for M.2 SSD. And like I said, I'll talk about this board a little bit more in tomorrow's live stream. And then right here, you can see it. We've been hard at work and we took it to the next level. It was really difficult, but we're really excited about offering a mini ITX solution for AM5 with some really cool design implementations on this. So I'm not going to get into all the details, but we definitely have some fantastic boards in this respect. So again, whether you're going to be building mini, micro, or ATX, we're going to have you covered. All right. Let's go through. I know that their questions might have been popping up. So let's see, as we get ready to wrap things up here, what other questions we might have right here. So Derek is asking, let me see your idea. Sorry, right there. See, Wait, the Gene has 6 pin below the 24 pin. Okay, so you caught it. You caught it. I'm gonna go ahead and confirm that for you. So yes, sorry, that question was saying is that that board will also support our 60-watt USB PD charging. So that's the reason why there's that 6-pin PCI Express power connector. So yes, again, I will go into all the details tomorrow, but just to recap, wondering what he's talking about is right here, that little 6-pin that works with then the USB 3.2 Gen 2 by 2. So that means 20 gigabits port right there. Is that when you plug in that PCI Express power, that means it can support up to 60 watts. So if you want to connect something like a Zenfone 9, an ROG Phone 6, heck, a G14 laptop, right, which has 65 watt power charging, you have a 65 watt, output, 60 watt quick charge 4.0 support that can run from that one primary USB port internally. Okay. CPU socket have more pins. Yes, AM5 is new LGA, so there's more pins. It was purposely designed by AMD to be able to support essentially a higher level of performance, right? So that's the reason why there's a transition right there. Any word on pricing? I can't give you any word on pricing. You're just going to want to make sure to keep it tuned. In the not too distant future, we'll have more information in that regard. Bob Vila says the crosshair is looking real good. I would definitely agree. Whoa, thank you. Thank you so much. Love the ITX. Will the ROG Spalding basketball be restocked? Oh, that's a great question. I don't actually know if it had actually gone live yet. I know that it was going to be exclusive to the Asus eStore. I was away in Canada, so I don't know if it already got listed. I do know that it was a limited production-based production allocation. So I don't believe actually there's a lot of restocking, if any. So what I would recommend, James, is if you can, email me pcdiy@asus.com or tag me in the PCDIY group, which is linked in the description, and I'll check to see if it actually has been listed or if there's a planned restock, because it is a limited edition production. Okay. This is going to rock. Small form factor, professional gaming boards. Yes, for sure. All right. So it sounds like I think that's probably most of the questions right here. How long until QVL lists for RAM are published for each board? Just make sure it should be in alignment for probably the launch. But I also always like to note, keep in mind that the QVL is only a rough approximation. We have maintained the #1 validated position for DDR4 and DDR base 5. And the QVL is important, but the QVL only gives you an approximation of essentially that memory has kind of been tested, but it doesn't mean that other memory, just because it's on the QVL, won't work. More critically, actually, a lot of users sometimes, just because they see something on the QVL, they might still duplicate a kit of memory, and that's not actually what would be recommended, because 2 kits of memory, of course, are going to have a different effective operating profile than the one single kit had in relation to its frequency, its timing, and its voltages, right? So that is something you have to be mindful of. And then there's also always the variability of, take for instance, like on Z690, you have the IMC, or the memory controller, which has variance, right? So even if you got QVL memory, you got the motherboard, which states certification for a certain memory speed, but let's say you bought like a 6600 MT kit of memory. Well, the reality is that the IMC on the CPU is variable, and maybe only about, maybe 50% of CPUs can even hit a 6600 MT divider. So it doesn't matter that's on the QVL, because you're not counting for the variance that exists within the CPU. So there's always additional pieces of information. We've tried to provide additional information like this. Like, we have a great DDR5 insights post in the inside of our PCDIY group. And we'll actually have an upcoming video where I'll actually be showing and demonstrating how IMC variance plays into how you work with memory. And we also had a great conversation with Kingston as well as Micron, talking about things like rank, density, 2 DIMM per channel, 1 DIMM per channel, and how many different factors affect the overall kind of memory operating experience. Okay. All right. Let me just see right here. All lineup of motherboards we will present on AM5 at launch. Yes. So don't worry, Kurt. Yeah, we'll have a full deep dive. When the launch gets here, I will have a full comprehensive lineup overview. So I will cover all of the boards that we'll have available within each one of our respective series. We'll talk about all the features, functions, and expectations. Hopefully, we'll maybe even have a demo sample on hand, and I can do some live demonstration in terms of performance tuning features for things like our dynamic OC switcher technology and some other cool things that we've baked up. So make sure to keep it tuned. All right. All right, so I think that is more or less going to get ready to wrap it up here. Let me just go see if we have any last questions that might have popped up right there, and we'll see. It goes right there. Is there any ASUS RAM? Would be cool to have everything the same. Right now, we don't have any plan for RAM, but of course, we are a #1 validated partner. So, we're going to work with all of our key partners, G-Skill, Team Group, Patriot, Kingston. It doesn't matter. We're pretty much working with all the leading partners in that respect. And also, when we talk about, IC validation too, we're also directly working with partners like Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron, who are the actual manufacturers for the ICs that are utilized within system memory as well. Okay. I can't give you a specific in terms of the ITX release availability. We'll probably have more information about that when we get to the formal AM5 launch. Okay. All right. Yeah, somebody's saying is that they're the ROG STIX branded RAM for XPG. That is correct. That is an ROG certified memory kit, which also does carry some additional benefits out of standard XMP profiling memory. Are there worthy upgrades to the current X570 market? So, that really comes down to kind of your preference, right? What you would consider to be kind of a qualitative upgrade, right? Zen 4 is definitely already been shown by AMD to offer quite a bit of performance-based benefits. You have DDR5, which of course is going to provide significantly higher bandwidth. You have PCI Gen 5. And then even if you look at IO specifications, depending on which X75 board you might have, right? You can have things like 40 gigabits base USB, right? You could have Wi-Fi 6E, right? You could have higher quality grade audio. You have even more M.2 based SSDs that can be supported, right? Most of the standard M.2 SSDs in terms of max support on X570 is only 2, where even the entry TUF gaming board is going to have 4 slots, right? As far as whether that's valuable to you, that's something that, you have to evaluate based on, your experience and your kind of preference in terms of the features, functions, and specifications you're looking for, right? All right. Charles is asking amperage capacity of the VRM. It depends on which board, but I did recap that. So TUF Gaming is going to be a 14+2 teamed power stage design with 70 amp power stages. And then as you go up, it'll go up higher. The ROG Strix is 110 amp power stages and 18+2. And then you go into the Hero, into the Crosshair, 18+2 or 20+2. But those boards also even feature they're SPS-based power stages, and then you have microfine alloy inductors, which have a higher rating than the standard inductors, and then you also have 10K rated capacitors, which offer twice the lifespan and even better thermal efficiency and operating characteristics than your standard inductors. So there's lots of upgrades, and the reality is across the board, doesn't matter which VRM you get, whether it's the TUF Gaming, the ROG Strix, the Prime, or the ProArt, they're all, trust me, going to be able to ensure a great experience when it comes to stock or overclock configuration for these parts. Okay. Any changes in the AAO? Nope. No changes in that regard. You're going to have interoperability and compatibility. Like I noted for the Ryzen 2, it will support interoperability and compatibility with AM5. It will just require an updated bracket. But for the rest of the coolers, they are all going to already essentially be AM5 ready. All right. All right, guys, that pretty much, I think, recaps us again. I'm just going to quickly show that TUF Gaming board just to wrap us up right here. See if we have any last questions. If not, we're going to go ahead and get ready to wrap up this stream. Again, appreciate you guys joining us for this. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, whatever it might be, feel free to go ahead and drop them in the chat. You can also make sure to join us in our ASUS PC DIY group, where we've got full posts on each one of these boards. And if you have more questions, you can feel free to go ahead and tag me there. And also make sure to go ahead and keep tuned here for our follow-up stream, which will be covering the Gene and this Dash I, so the micro ATX and the mini ATX based motherboard. I'll probably throw the ProArt and the Prime in there as well. So we'll have a little bit of a bonanza when it comes to those base motherboards. But make sure to check us out in the group. So as a quick, again, I'll recap here. TUF Gaming, X670E-PLUS. This is the board. Quick recap on just the core specs, right? You're going to have 10 USB ports on the rear, all high-speed ports, so USB 3.2. You're going to have 10 gigabits and 20 gigabits. You've got DP and HDMI for that integrated Radeon graphics, 2.5 gigabit networking, Wi-Fi 6E, and Bluetooth 5.2. 14+2 power stages, 70 amp, 14+2 team power stage configuration with 70 amps. Our ProCool power connectors, right? DDR5 support, an AIO pump, and a water pump, 4 SATA ports, 4 M.2 SSDs that can be supported, including PCI Gen 5 M.2 SSD, and also PCI Gen 5 graphics, then 2 PCI Gen 4 M.2 SSDs, and 1 PCI Gen 3 M.2 base SSD. Upgraded, discrete, isolated audio design, TUF Gaming audio design with the S1228 audio codec that is present on here. And then even your RGB lighting has been upgraded this generation with 3 RGB headers versus 1 from the prior generation. And you also have some other nice updates with things like AI Cooling 2, which also going to be present on this board, and there's even some more stuff that we'll be talking about as we get closer to the launch. All right, guys, so hopefully that wraps it up. Let me lastly see if we have any questions right there. Daniel's asking about prices. As always, can't give you any prices right now. Make sure to keep it tuned for MSRP pricing as we get closer to the launch. That's why this is a first look preview. We just want to help you to know right off the bat what we're going to have coming down the pipe. And from price to performance positioning, remember, TUF Gaming will be our entry into gaming. Then we will have ROG Strix will be more expensive. And then ROG Crosshair will be our most expensive gaming series, right? So that's that good, better, best positioning. All right. I think that wraps up everything. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us with this stream. Hopefully you found it interesting and useful. If you can, go ahead and smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, and make sure to join us in the ASUS PC DIY group. Take care, take it easy, and enjoy the rest of your day. And best of luck with your builds.